Welcome to the Nazareth College Centennial Podcast. I'm your host, Timothy Nealand, and in each episode I'll be guiding you through stories of amazing alumni, fascinating faculty, or the hidden history of the college. Today's episode, the life and legacy of Jim Feuerstein.
He's a very warm, engaging professional.
Jim taught at Nazareth College for a quarter of a century before retiring, and this episode is drawn from an interview conducted by Clarissa Wise for the Centennial Oral History Project. Our special guest, Lisa Durant Jones, will share with us some memories of working with Jim.
I'm Jim Feuerstein. I was a professor here at Nazareth College for 25 years. I taught audiology in the Department of Communication Sciences and Disorders. I grew up on Long Island. I lived there until I went away to college. So from 1953 until 1971, I lived in the middle of Nassau County on Long Island in just a suburban community. That's pretty much it. My interest in audiology originally was by happenstance, and that happens to any number of us as we go through our college careers. I started out as a theater major at SUNY Oswego. While I was in Oswego, I found the speech-language speech therapy department. We had a course that I took there in how to work on your own speech and how to remove regionalisms, how to improve general speaking, but not public speaking types of things. And I took that because I was a theater major and I wanted to learn more about what I could do with my speech and my voice and how I might be able to use that as part of my craft. That led me to thinking about not wanting to wait tables as an aspiring actor down the road. And I decided I would get a degree in speech pathology so that I could work during the year and then also do summer stock and try and get my credentials. That led me to eventually to transfer to SUNY Geneseo. I went there first as a visiting student. The second day on campus, I met my future wife and decided to transfer. I stayed as a speech-language pathology student through my undergraduate degree and realized while I was student teaching that there was no way I was going to be a speech pathologist for the rest of my life. It just was not what I really felt compelled to do. And I looked at papers I'd written and things I'd done as an undergraduate. Every single one of them had to do with hearing. So I went to one of the audiology faculty at Geneseo, Dr. Ron Sittler, and I said, "Ron, I think I want to be an audiologist." And he said, "Sign here." I transferred programs at the graduate level, and that was pretty much where it went from there. I worked for 3 years after I got my master's degree at the Rochester Hearing and Speech Center. Interesting, we might cycle back to that later. But I worked for Rochester Hearing and Speech Center full-time for 3 years, at which time Ron actually invited me to come back to Geneseo as an instructor to teach there. And once I started teaching, I got hooked. I went to the program at the State University of New York at Buffalo, completed my PhD there in 1988, continued to teach at Geneseo until the early 90s, at which time the provost for the college was looking to close the graduate master's program that we had in audiology. It was a fairly small program, and the move was going from the master's degree to doctoral entry in audiology at that point. So it was time to leave Geneseo and move on.
After leaving Geneseo, Jim came to Nazareth to ask about adjunct opportunities and was offered a job.
came up to Nazareth just simply to talk with Shirley Zakaris. Dr. Zakaris was then chair of the Department of Speech Language Pathology here at Nazareth, to see whether or not there might be a position for an adjunct instructor. I was actually planning at that point possibly to go back into the private sector and work. I had maintained my ties at Rochester Hearing and Speech Center. I was still a consultant to them at that point. And she said, gee, we're looking for a full-time audiology faculty member so that they could get the program accredited by the American Speech Language Hearing Association. So in the right place at the right time, I decided I would take a position here at Nazareth. Came here, fell in love with the place, have been absolutely enthralled with it, and stayed here for the remainder of my career.
One thing that struck Jim was just how different and special Nazareth College students are from those that he taught at UB, Geneseo, and Syracuse.
Taught now at 4 different institutions. Certainly my primary teaching was at Geneseo for 13 years, in Nazareth then for 25 after that. But as a doctoral candidate, I taught at SUNY Buffalo, and I've been an adjunct at Syracuse University in their doctoral program since 2006, teaching an occasional course here, there, and the next place. So institutions that range from a size of in excess of 20,000 students, 20,000 undergrads, at UB, Geneseo about 5,000 undergrads, in Nazareth in the 2,000 range. Beyond just having a smaller number of students and having somewhat smaller classes here, although not dramatically smaller in all cases, there's something about Nazareth that's different. And it may be that once the student body gets beyond a certain point, people just don't know each other. They go into their silos, they go into their cubby holes of their major, they stay there and they don't branch out a whole lot. It's hard to say, but when I looked at the end of the year, if there was an end of the year event, say at Geneseo, for the most part, the students in the speech and hearing program there would cluster together at those events. When I go to the end of the year banquet, the senior banquet here at Nazareth, the students are scattered all out through the entire room with their friends from other majors and other disciplines. So there's a lot of sharing sort of that goes on that way, which is kind of unique and kind of fun. I don't know that I always wanted to teach, but I think I'm reasonably good at some of it. To be quite honest with you, what I've told students over the years when I've encouraged them to go back to get their doctoral degree is, this is the best gig in the world. You have a fair amount of freedom in your schedule, even though we're locked into a semester and locked into teaching times and things. You can do what you want, when you want to do it, how you want to do it, and that freedom is something that very few people get in their jobs. I loved working with my students all the way through, especially those that I was able to, quote unquote, turn to the dark side and turn from speech language pathologists into audiologists. It is a great gig. I loved it. I loved it enough that I taught in the summers as well as teaching during the year. Uh, it's been a good run. It was a good run.
Adored Dr. Feuerstein, Dr. F. They adored him. And it's just because everything about him was just happy and engaging and welcoming. That's that faculty member he was always accessible to his students. And he wasn't just accessible as this source of knowledge. He exuded so much excitement, interest, just by his physical presence. So he taught some of the more difficult subjects in our field, our undergrad program. One of them is called speech science. And so it's a lot of physics and acoustics. And he did it in such a way that the students always felt like they could grasp some of the basic concepts. He would incorporate fun activity, physiology. So on Halloween, they would have to come into class for extra credit, having outlined certain muscles of the face. And exemplar professor, he took his students on a journey of learning that they will be all the more enriched. And even at his when we were kind of paying tribute to him, some of his former students, and they came back to speak about the impact that he had on their professional development. He was a remarkable human being.
As a colleague, Jim was thoughtful, kind, and considerate. He cared deeply about the work that we are about at Nazareth College, but more important than that to him were the people in his life.
He conducted his business very, seriously, but at the same time, he didn't take himself too serious. He worked well with faculty. He and I shared some overlap time with administrative duties. So I was the program director, the graduate program director, and he was the department chair. And we were going through a very significant accreditation cycle. And I'll never forget when we got the initial feedback, there were new standards that we had to address, and he gave of his time, and we just sat there and hammered it out. Accepted that from him. I think that accreditation point process where so much was on the line, and that he and I were able to collaborate on that document will always be something that I'll be forever grateful with, because he was just very caring, but he was also very thoughtful, analytical. So if you were working with Jim Feuerstein, you were getting the best of thinking. He didn't just engage in conversations or activities without giving it all, his all. And he built coalitions. We always have our challenges when you're bringing a group of faculty together, but he thought it was important to build coalitions. And some of the ways he would do that is some of the extracurricular activities. So he hosted something called, what was the frolics? So he would always invite faculty and friends to his home, and they would have chili cook-offs. But, he always wanted to make sure that there was a personal connection between his colleagues, not just professional. The department holiday parties, multiple occasions. So as a chair, he recognized the importance of building a team and supporting his faculty colleagues, not only professionally, but socially.
Jim saw many changes in his quarter century at Nazareth, but the one thing that remained was the sense of community that makes Nazareth so special.
I started teaching the college at that point in the early 90s. I don't know the exact number of faculty. I would say it was probably between about 100 and 120 or so. We now have a faculty that's pushing 200, I believe. It was about 160 something as of a couple of years ago, and that doesn't include the adjuncts that are here. So certainly the college has grown. Before I came here, and in the early years that I was here, the college was on its original footprint. We hadn't acquired the land from the Sisters of St. Joseph, and the huge change that made as far as the Golisano Academic Center to have the room to build Peckham Hall and to expand Carroll Hall as we did in the 90s, and then to re-expand it into the YWRI now, just huge changes. And I think for the most part, all for the good. The number of students has grown certainly over time, but not by a huge amount. So I think we still have that sense of family. You'd be better to inform me about that, but my sense is that students here feel like they're part of a community, part of a very large kind of extended family when they're on campus. And that's nice that that's been able to stay.
Reflecting on his legacy at Nazareth, Jim was proud of the role that he played in hiring Shirley Zaccharis as the first dean of the School of Health and Human Services, of his work in creating the first undergraduate minor in audiology, and in the development of a new model of faculty governance at Nazareth in the form of the Faculty Senate.
There were a few things that I was involved with change-wise that I look back on and think of as pretty powerful and important things that happened. So let me go back and circle back into that question a little bit. One was certainly the change from the college as a whole to the college and the three schools. When we did that, one of the things that we needed to do was we needed to go out and find deans for the College of Arts and Sciences and for the three professional schools. I was the department chair in Communication Sciences and Disorders at the time, and as a chair was part of the search committee for the dean for that position. We had a year-long search that failed. We did not find a dean. We were at the end of our second year-long search to try and find a dean and looking at the probability that that search was also going to fail. We just simply could not identify somebody that we thought was appropriate to the School of Health and Human Services and where the departments kind of stood at that point. And I kind of recognized at that point that when I looked at the qualifications and the characteristics that we were defining of who we wanted in that position, that she was sitting in my department. And that was Shirley Zaccharis. She had been the chair prior to me in Communication Sciences and Disorders, and she really was the person we defined. So at a great loss to our department, I went back to the department and I went to Shirley's office and I invited her to please apply to be the dean, because everyone in the room, all of the department chairs, said exactly the same thing. That's who should be sitting here. And I take a little bit of credit for that only because Shirley was the absolute best possible choice to be the first dean of the School of Health and Human Services here at Nazareth College. She brought our programs together. Her vision of interdisciplinary, interprofessional collaboration and therapies and approach to health and human services issues was phenomenal. Without her in that position, the York Wellness and Rehabilitation Institute would not exist. It was her vision. She's the one who did that. She should be the one in here doing this oral history, because she made huge contributions to that school and brought us together in a way that's just absolutely phenomenal. And I take a little bit of credit for being the one to say, yeah, she's in my department and we ought to get her over here. She was the mover and shaker in that. So that's a change thing that I'm pretty proud of, that I think we did, and we did right. Another change thing that we did, and it's something that I personally take a little bit of credit for, although I kind of blame it on one of my students. I had a student who was a speech-language pathology student. She desperately wanted to get into a Doctor of Audiology program. She was very concerned that she was not going to get into a program. She had been a swimmer in her first couple of years, so some of her early grades here at Naz had suffered a little bit. She had done reasonably well after that, and still had pretty good grades, but was concerned. So I offered her a seminar that we did, and we took that seminar. She took that seminar, and when she went to register for it, there were 2 other students who said, "We want to do this too." So there were 3 in that initial group. But Rachel, now Rachel Franklin, was the driving force behind setting up that seminar. That seminar actually led over time to us getting about 10 or 15 students over the years into doctoral programs on their first attempt all over the country. Syracuse University, the University of Buffalo, what was then Arizona Medical College, Arizona State University, James Madison, Northeastern. We've had some pretty good success getting students into those programs. And that led to Nazareth having the only, as far as I'm aware, the only undergraduate minor in audiology in the country. And that minor, when I know from talking with the admissions people over at Syracuse, the people in the department who look at things, when they see that, it perks up their interest, because students have a very concentrated set of courses that nobody else in the country has. And I'm pretty pleased with that. That was a good thing. It's Rachel's fault that ended up happening, but that's okay. She's a representative for Med-El, which is one of the 3 cochlear implant companies. She's the Northeast regional rep for them. So Dr. Franklin has done some pretty good stuff with her career. The final change goes to one. When I first arrived here at Nazareth, we had that 120 students, faculty or so. And when we had a faculty meeting, pretty much everybody gathered upstairs, or over in Schultz in the forum, and pretty much most of the faculty was there at faculty meetings. And we had governance of the whole. Basic democracy. When we had to vote on something as a faculty, all of the faculty were in the room and voted on it, and we went. And that's a tradition going back to the Sisters of St. Joseph, who used to sit around the dinner table and discuss what was happening in the early days, because there were only 8 or 9 of them, and they could do that. I had come out of Geneseo, where we had a Senate system for making faculty decisions, and I watched what was going on in faculty meetings and said, this rule of the mob democracy that we have is not as efficient a system. It worked, but it wasn't as efficient. And probably me as well. When faculty would stand up, you could expect the same thing from the same people time after time after time on issue after issue after issue, and it just took us forever to make a decision. As the faculty grew and we got up beyond 150 and going even beyond that, that system started to become very dysfunctional. There were times when we had serious votes of issues before the faculty, and we were lucky to have a quorum of just over 50% of the faculty in the room to vote, 75 faculty or more. It was problematic. It took us 13 years to develop a new revised core curriculum from a curriculum that had been put in place in 1988. It took us longer to come up with a new one than the old one had been in place when we decided to replace it. It didn't work. So I kind of banded together with a couple of other faculty, and we started to push a little bit for moving to a more representative faculty governance model here at Nazareth. Chair of the Faculty Executive Committee asked if I would chair the Faculty Governance Committee, and the long and the short of it is we now have a Faculty Senate here at Nazareth College. It took us about 4 or 5 years to get that whole process through and set up, but I think it's a much more efficient and better way to get things done, and I'm pretty pleased with that. So that's about that. It's been pretty good.
Post his time at Nazareth, he became the chair of the Board of Trustees at Rochester Hearing and Speech. He was in his element because he loved to lead, he loved to wordsmith, and seeing him in that setting, he was thriving, because when you're on a board of trustees, it's voluntary, but it's very important work because the agency really relies on the board of trustees and the board of directors to take their responsibilities seriously. And as a volunteer, he did, and he put in hours. It was probably as many hours working as a volunteer board of directors as it was to be a full-time faculty. I remember when I watch him in those meetings, I would say, well, now he can do all his wordsmithing and all the kinds of deliberations. He thrived.
Jim died in May of 2020.
When he passed away, it was just a horrific shock, not only to this campus at Nazareth College, but every faculty member, whether it was at Geneseo or the boards that he sat on. It was just such a loss, and really hit hard.
Jim was a remarkable man who left a lasting impression on his students, colleagues, and on Nazareth College itself. He'll be missed. We can also remember and remind ourselves of the special people in our lives to make a positive impact every day. Our thanks to Clarissa Weiss for her interview with Jim, with Cameron Perez for her research, to Tim Held for sharing his music, Alpha and Omega, via the Free Music Archive. And of course, we thank you, the listener. If you like what you hear, let us know. You can email us at publichistory@naz.edu or call us at 585-389-2649.